My first ever introduction to horror movies had to be somewhere at the age of 10, maybe. I was sitting on my grandparents' couch in my grandpa's basement. He was eating cereal and watching a movie. And in the movie, I remember seeing, he didn't seem to care that I was even in the room at the time. But the movie that he was watching, there was a woman in an alley. And this dude was like, kissing her or whatever. It looks like it was going to turn into a rape scene or something. And suddenly, she busts out fangs and wants to gnaw on this guy. And then out of nowhere, this third dude shows up, tears the guy off of the woman, pins the woman up against the wall, takes a stake, shoves it into her throat, against the wall, and hammers it in. I don't know what movie that's from. To this day, I have not been able to find that movie. But that was my first ever introduction to horror. It was a vampire movie, of course. And then after that, he ended up watching John Carpenter's Vampires, which is a movie I have seen, and I have recalled scenes from it. But my first ever introduction to horror movies was through that one scene in that vampire movie, and I asked my grandpa, what was that? Like, what was that thing called? That act of violence, of the blood and stuff. And he said that was gore. And I remember that day as the first day I learned what the word gore meant. And from that day forward, I loved it. And to this day, I love horror movies. One of my top tier genres. And I will love it till the day I die. That is if, movie makers continue to, every once in a while, astonish us with masterpieces such as the recently made It Follows. Great movie. The Shallows, Jaws ripoff. I hear they're making a remake of It. Not looking forward to that, but we'll see. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But pretty much, I was introduced to at least hardcore horror at a relatively young age, and I don't think it fucked me up any. Used to read a lot of Fangoria. If you guys don't know what that is, it was a horror magazine. And back when I used to live in Florida, me and my family used to live in Florida, there was this place, Downtown Disney. And in Downtown Disney, there was a big Virgin Records. I don't know how many floors, probably just 2 or 3. And in this Virgin Records, all the way in the top and the back, there was this big circular area with a big open space with chairs in it. If you looked over these barriers, you could see down to the first floor. But along this back row, or back circular area, there was all magazines, every magazine you could think of. Or at least it seemed like that at the time. And the one that I would always check out when we'd go in there was the Fangoria. And Fangoria told you about directors, upcoming movies, and then through Fangoria, I found out what Chucky was, which led to a lot of nightmares and a lot of paranoia. And then I saw the Chucky movies and I got over it. But I think all those first, anytime I was introduced to something in horror, it wasn't something like Michael Myers or something like Scream with, oh, people are dying, people are kind of getting stabs. No, I was being introduced to movies where people were literally being torn the fuck apart. And I don't know. I don't think it seemed to have messed me up as bad as, most of these jokers who make these books about how certain things destroy youth or ruin youth, or I hate that shit. Like that one guy who wrote Deception of the Innocent or something. It was some guy from the 1950s, 60s, I don't know when, but he wrote a book about how horror comics or comics in general destroyed youth, turned them gay or something, some stupid shit like that. But one of the reasons I wanted to tackle the subject of horror, at least today, was because I seem to notice something about the culture, which I'm sure a lot of other people have noticed, but I've never really heard anyone talk about. And that is and older generations need to pick on something that the newer generation has. At one point, it was swing music. The Nazis didn't like swing music because it promoted freedom or thinking against the mold. Then there was rock music, was hated. Then I'm sure radio was hated at some point. Then television was... I'm not sure how television went. I'm sure there were people who protested against that. Or people who wrote books about how that was going to destroy the world. Which it is still doing today, so I guess they were kind of right. But it's not killing anybody. But of course, there was also comics. That was a big thing. Oh, it's destroying the youth, blah, 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 blah. Then it was video games, and I don't know, maybe the next thing they'll pick on is VR. They'll say it's sending radio signals into our brains and making us brain dead while playing it. I don't know, but it always seems that the older generation always needs something to pick on with the younger generation. And I feel sorry to say that I think we're probably going to do the exact same thing. Because as soon as we get older, and as soon as we end up, in the position that our parents and our grandparents and everybody else is at now, we are going to look down on what our kids have or what our grandkids have, and we are going to just rub our foreheads in frustration. Because, I don't know, maybe the old needs something to bitch about. Maybe times are really changing for the worse. Or maybe it doesn't matter at all. I don't know. Just been on my mind lately. And, yeah. That's all I really wanted to talk about today. I want to know your comments. What do you think about it? Tell me in the comment section below. Thanks for listening. To what, I have no idea.